Welcome to the CashPT lunch hour. This is Aaron LeBauer, and today I have a special guest. He comes to us all the way from down under. In Excess and Paul Wright, they all come from the same country. And so today I've got Paul Wright, the physio professor, and Paul reached out to me a few years ago, and we connected. He's a physical therapist in Australia who's also helping other physios create successful businesses. And so I want to have him on the podcast to share with you guys exactly what he's doing and how he's been successful and what he's doing to help other people. So thank you, Paul, for joining us. It's really a pleasure to have you on the show.
Mate, great to be here. And as I reached out again after I'd hit you up for two different events before. So, Aaron, it was a subject on my physio summit. So I did a World Physical Therapy Business Success Summit. And I hit Aaron up to be interviewed on that. And only a few weeks ago, I said, mate, I've got a new program going on. I want to do social media case studies. And I hit him up again. So I thought it was only right that I returned the favour and get on the other side of the interview process for you, Aaron. So thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
You're very welcome. Great to be with you too. So tell me, let's just kind of I don't know a ton about you, Paul. I mean, but this is the thing. The only thing that's important is that I get your personality that comes through. And, I feel like if we actually met in person, we'd be really good friends. But, it's like, so let's learn a little bit more about you. You've been, how long have you been a physio? How long have you been, in business? Like, give us that, obviously not like the 5-hour version, but
the long sad story. Well, mate, but basically I started out my career. I grew up in a small town northwest of Sydney, about 6 hours northwest of Sydney. Small town. No, there wasn't a physiotherapist or physical therapist, as you guys call it, in the town. I didn't know even what one was. So the best choice for me was to become a physical education teacher. So I went to university in Newcastle, which is east coast of Australia, studied to become a physical education teacher. Like most entrepreneurs, Aaron, I got 2 or 3 years into that and thought, gee, I don't think I can work for myself as a teacher. So I thought, well, what's next? And I'd learned then about injuries and anatomy and physiology. And I thought, well, gee, physio I'd met a physio at a party and talked about physiotherapy. And I thought, well, this is the go. So I applied to Sydney Uni. Thought I could probably work for myself in that capacity. So I ended up studying physiotherapy at Sydney Uni. And there's a lesson straight away for you guys, and I wish I'd known this. We typically, as we go through our careers, Aaron, we fall in love with our product. So I fell in love with the idea of being a physio. And at no real time during that whole process did I think, is there a demand for that service? But I just wanted to be one. And you hear that a lot. People just fell in love with the idea of being something without really thinking, is there a demand for it? And you see it now when people open health practices in remote areas, and they get 10 years down the track and they're chained to it because they can't get staff for it. But they fell in love with the idea of being a practitioner in a country town, but then didn't really think about the long-term ramifications of it. So, I fell in love with being a physio, and I ended up being a physio. So I finished my course. Did a year in the public hospital in Sydney, which I didn't like working for someone else. So I opened my first practice in Sydney just 1 year after graduating. I was fortunate too, Aaron. I got reading about business, and I was in the fitness industry as an educator. And at every fitness conference, there was a really big business strand. So I'd go to all the business lectures. So I got educated very early in business. And there wasn't that business strand in the physio conferences. They didn't have a business strand in those days. So I was educated early in business from the fitness industry. Got interested in Michael Gerber and the E-Myth. Hope you've all read the E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And then proceeded to open 6 practices in Sydney over the next few years. And my claim to fame, Aaron, is I didn't work in any of them. Wow. So I opened the 6, but in true Michael Gerber fashion, I wanted to run them without me. I ended up moving out of Sydney altogether, and I didn't actually live in the same city as the practices. So, and I then travel back to Sydney 1 day a week, and the classic story for you guys, I would still go to each of the practices on a Monday, pick up the money from in the envelopes that were stored in each of the day's tills, and also, Aaron, how's this for a classic? pick up the towels.
Right.
So I'd go and pick up all the towels because I hadn't learnt yet. I had to outsource everything. So here I was, this so-called successful health professional with his lots of practices, still dragging towels into the practice every day, every Monday, filling up them, swapping them over, and taking them back to Helen, my beautiful wife, to then wash them for the week. So it was a lesson in dumb and smart at the same time. But at that stage, Aaron, I had a 300 ZX Nissan sports car. Mm-hmm. So and I love my Nissan 300 ZX. So I'd pack it with towels because it was only a small car. So I'd come back from Sydney to Newcastle covered in towels. So I'm in the middle of this driving down the freeway with the towels all around me. And Helen used to say, well, at least you're safe. If anything happens, I'm going to survive. So anyway, so that was my practice journey.
That's great. How long ago was that?
Oh, that was in the early 2000s, getting into late 2000s. I then, probably nearly 4 years ago now, I started selling the practices off. I got more interested in online education for business owners because people were asking me, Righty, how do you run 6 practices and don't go to any of them? How come you're at every sports carnival? Why does even my daughter laughs now, the principal thought I was a drug dealer. Why is your dad at everything? Why doesn't he go to work? What's your dad doing? So people were asking me, how do I do it? How is that happening? And I liked educating business owners about running better businesses. So I got more interested in that. And then, so as a result, sold the practices. The last one I think I sold 4 years ago now.
Okay.
There's another lesson for you guys. Always think about the selling potential of your business and complete the business cycle. So
right.
Everything's for sale, and you've got to think all the time, is what you're doing at the moment going to increase the sale price of my business when I sell it, or will it not increase the sale price of my business when I sell it? Now that involves your leases, involves your marketing, your website, your systems. That's all sellable. If you can then think about the future bank, which we talk about in business, it's the future bank of your business. We tend to, in healthcare, Aaron, think just about the current bank, which is what we take to the bank every week. But the future bank is what's the value of the business when I go to sell it. And it's scary how many health professionals, Aaron, work 20, 30 years in a practice, get to the stage where they want to sell it and they're not worth anything.
Right.
And it's traumatic. Anyway, that's sort of my journey. On the way, I've produced lots of info products, done summits, do private mentoring, written a book. Just it's sort of my journey as a entrepreneur, health business owner, if you like.
Right. Did you know, so you knew in school that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or was it like after you had kind of graduated with your first like physical education degree that you were like, I got to do something different, work for myself?
Yeah, I think I must have thought a bit reasonably early, Aaron, because I graduated from my, as I got towards the end of my physical education course, and I realised that I couldn't really work for myself, so that was a concern for me. And then I was probably 12 months into my physiotherapy career when I thought, hang on, I can possibly get a job out of this. I can make a business for myself and work for myself in my own industry. So that's kind of, it was probably in the physiotherapy world that I thought that, but it wasn't until I started going to the fitness conference, fitness events and the business strand that I probably realized that there was a real opportunity here in business that I took.
So continuing on, so you knew you wanted to work for yourself. Like, why was that so important to you?
I think why is it so important? Because I'm not good taking instruction. Most entrepreneurs and most business owners are the same. We classically fail as employees. We just don't really understand why someone would do it that way, and we would want to change it and do it our way. And I don't think I'm a control freak, but then maybe I am. I just can't stand being told what to do. I even say to Helen now, I say to my beautiful wife, you can tell me what to do or how to do it, but you can't do both. That'll do my head in. I think then you want to be at the front of the plane. You want to make the decisions. And one thing that I did learn, Aaron, the real benefit of being a business owner is you can choose. You have a choice to go to work, to market your business, to educate yourself. So you have a choice of doing that. But
Right.
if you're an employer, you lose a lot of choice. And I always wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. And one of the biggest business lessons I learned, Aaron, and I hear this a lot with my private clients now, they get very frustrated sometimes by their team members. I'm trying to get them to do this and they won't do it, or this happened, and they tend to externally blame their team for a lot of things that happen inside the business. One of the most important lessons I ever learned, and I teach all my clients this, you have to accept 100% responsibility for everything that happens in your business. If the guy turns up, if your team member turns up at the office and doesn't have his key to open the door, and you can sit there and say that guy's silly for not bringing his key, but
Right.
what was the backup system? What's the process in place? It's your fault. The person discharges a client too early. That's your fault. The therapist doesn't follow up with a patient. That's your fault. Everything is your fault in the business. It's the Michael Gerber expression, the fish stinks from the head down. And I love that expression. Everything's your fault. Now, whilst that's harsh, it's actually very freeing. Right. Because once you accept responsibility for everything, you can fix it, you can choose to fix it, or you can choose not to. So rather than blaming everyone else, you blame yourself, you fix it, or you don't fix it, and you just accept it, and that's what it is. It's actually very freeing, and you can't do that as a team member. The other thing which made me think then, Aaron, when you talk about team members, we try and always instill an ownership mentality in our team members, and I did this for years. And I think as I look back at my career as an owner, it's probably a pretty big mistake, because they're not owners. They're team members, and to think they're going to act and think like an owner, it's an impossible analysis, because they're so different from you. You control their hours, you control their rosters, what they wear, what they say, you control the lot. For them to then want them in owner, it's a different space altogether. So
Right.
That's my take on it.
Yeah, no, I get it. And that's a great point, because, I think most people who want to be employees want a little bit of security in a paycheck, and you're trading things. There's people who need different things. They want some security to know, okay, every 2 weeks I'm going to get the same amount of money. And I'm going to do these things. And it's a very different mindset, and asking, and then I think a lot of people say, well, how do I get someone to come work for me without taking all my patients away? Well, you're looking for you can't replace yourself. You got to find a different type of person to come work for you. And that's one
of the fears too, Aaron, when people take on team members, and they always get the concern, well, I get this team member on, and what if they get really popular with the clients, and then they open their own practice up the road? Like, what happens if that's the case? Well, I can't tell you how many times that happened to me, Aaron. It happens over and over again. And they say, well, you're training all these people to be therapists, and then they leaving in competition to you. But you've got to be smart on that. What's the alternative? Mm-hmm. You do it all yourself. Like there's no real alternative to it. You accept that's the price of doing business. Yes, you have radius clauses and other things that are largely unenforceable, certainly in Australia. But you make money while they're there from them, which gives you the lifestyle that you want. So I was able to be at every sports carnival. I was able to live my ideal life because of what these guys were doing. If that means occasionally they opened up the road and took some of the clients, then so be it. But there's no alternative to it. I said, well, Roddy, we train these people and then they leave. But what's the alternative? You don't train them and they stay. Mm-hmm. Like it's a ridiculous analysis. So accept they're going to move on, wish them well, make it difficult for them. So make sure your systems are good, your programs are good, make sure your business is outstanding. So it's hard for someone to move on and replicate it.
Right.
But I've got guys that are running practices now that came through the Get Active Physio system. And in hindsight, I probably should have franchised, and I probably should have done all sorts of partnerships with these guys. But I was happy for them. I still see them now, and I'm really proud of what they've done. They're great practitioners and great business owners, mate, and good on them.
Yeah. And there's plenty of people that need physio. I mean, it's
and there is
a never-ending stream.
Yeah.
That's great. How many people?
Sorry, just made me think. Then I just had something. I tend to think about things all the time when this comes up. It leads me into and this is going to upset a few people.
Yeah.
The
Of
issue,
course.
the issues of partnerships, like partnerships in healthcare. 'Cause I find a lot of health professionals, health business owners want to get into partnerships. They will open a business and they will have a great team member, and they want to protect that team member and keep them on board. So they'll offer some sort of partnership in the business it's almost a retention strategy, Aaron. They'll put them in to keep them in the practice. Having had my practices for as long as I had, and coaching and mentoring, I've only really seen one business partnership go the distance in
Mm-hmm.
all of them. They're recipes for disaster in a lot of ways. And that's probably why I'm a control freak, but I also didn't want partners. I didn't want to license Get Active Physio. I didn't want to franchise Get Active Physio. I didn't want partners in those businesses because, again, it meant I was accountable to someone else or
Right.
responsible to someone else. And when you've run your own race a long time, if I didn't want to go to work, I didn't go to work. If I went on holidays, I'd go on holidays. But once you have a partner relationship, you then have an accountability. Well, if the business is bad, why am I going on holidays? How come you're not doing any consulting and I'm working 50 hours a week? There's no such thing, Aaron, in business as an even delineation of work.
Right.
It's impossible to evenly allocate it. And the only business partnerships I've seen done well are when the partners have incredibly different skill sets, and even to the stage where they run different parts of the business and just consult with each other. But there are, I'm sure there are people listening to this that are in partnerships that are doing very well. That invariably someone wants to retire, someone gets sick, someone does something, and then there's all sorts of trouble that happens, or they separate, and the owner of the business ends up partners with the spouse of the ex-partner. It's just a nightmare.
Right.
So anyway, I never want any of that. So partnerships, be real careful.
Yeah. I mean, I have also had similar experiences, and it's just, it's very, 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 very difficult to create a partnership that works for the long haul, that feels equitable on both sides without any, what's it called, resentment, and
Yeah.
feeling like I'm doing this, you're not doing that. And it's just because there's not one person, there's not a clear hierarchy. And even with Michael Gerber's book, like if you do that, it's still very difficult to be like, you've got this and I've got that, and feel like it's all even. So
The only time I would do it, for those that are out there, is if you have your core business. Say you've got a core practice and that's going really well. That's your cash cow. It's doing really well, and you've got a really good team member who has an entrepreneurial streak and wants to do their own thing but needs a bit of funding.
yeah.
I would possibly help them start a satellite practice. So I would probably go partnerships with them to open a separate business. But I'd know all the way along, if push come to shove, I'd walk away from it. It wouldn't. I'd open it to keep getting some money from that team member while they started their own business. But if it ever became a drama, there was legal issues, or you'd just walk away from it. But I would not split my core business. I would keep that. If it's a cash cow, which mine were, that would be my entity, and I would only either sell it or maybe start a satellite with someone else. But I wouldn't do it with my core business. And I tell all my clients the same thing.
Yeah, that's great advice, and that's really great advice. Important to think about. So, Paul, when you started your business, like how fast did you go from 0 to 6, and what was the biggest challenge you had along the way from going like 1 to 2 or to 6?
Well, okay, one of the biggest business mistakes you'll make is expanding faster than your ability to fill the key seats on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. I went from 1 to 6 in probably in a matter of 2 or 3 years. But it was at a time, Aaron, where there wasn't the available labour that I would have liked. You can have great systems, and you have to get great systems so you can leverage people with great systems. But if there's not a huge available labour supply of quality therapists, you're going to struggle. And I probably made that mistake. Also, what you find, I mean, they're still successful, but if I had a better available labour supply, would have been better for me. It also, when you expand your practices, Aaron, when you multiply, it multiplies problems. So if you haven't got your franchise prototype down pat, if it's not razor sharp and totally on song, you'll multiply the problems, because then you're spreading yourself over multiple locations. You find that as soon as you go from 1 to 2, like to run one practice, if you're there a fair bit of the time, it's easy to keep on top of those systems.
Mm-hmm.
Once you replicate it and you're spreading yourself across 2 practices, you limit the input you can have in those practices, and it decreases the effectiveness of your systems. As you multiply it out, it just gets worse and worse. If the systems weren't great when they started, they're not going to get better by the 6th one. You've got to make sure you get your franchise prototype right.
Yeah.
And all you guys should be working now on your business as if you are going to replicate it, and you're going to multiply it, because that's how you build a great business anyway.
Yeah. I've been telling people, like, you got to create systems, and I don't know that everyone really understands what they are, but I think so. I'm going to ask you about that in a second, but it's one of the big mistakes I made when I started. I wasn't planning on expanding or hiring other people. I was just like, I got to prove that this is going to work. Yeah. And so I didn't write down all the things. But so go back and tell us, explain, what is a core business system, and why is it so important?
Okay. Well, one of the most important, I'll give you a couple. And we'll probably get to in a second, but the 1 minute practice program. So I created the 1 minute practice program, which was really the end product of my 20 years as a health business owner. So what are the systems that we need in a health business that we can manage it, track it, and know what's happening in it, whether I'm there or not? And that's kind of the whole principle here, is to build a business that can work without use, and it runs the same whether you're there or not. And one of the fundamental systems that I put in, I talk about in the book, is what we call a new patient register. And a new patient register started out in my business as a simple Excel spreadsheet where we put the name of the new patient, the date they arrived, and then all of the systems and processes we wanted, or the steps we wanted that client to go through, was recorded somewhere. So then you've probably got the same in your businesses. So you think about, as a new patient arrives at your practice, what do you want to happen to them? So do they get a new patient folder? Do they fill in their new patient paperwork? Do they get added to your email list? Do they get, in the book, we talk about the importance of an action plan. And if there's one thing I'll leave with you guys today, you've got to have, this is a must do, you've got to have a single 1-page report. Chiropractors will talk about the report of findings. Mm-hmm. You've got to have a single 1-page report that you go through with the patient as you're sitting next to them after you've done the assessment. And it's simply an outline of what you found, what their problem is, and what you're going to do about it. And the key thing I wanted at the bottom of that sheet, Aaron, was what's the consultation booking plan? So it's, Mrs. Johnson, to get you ready for that running event in 2 weeks' time, you need to see me once a week for the next 2 weeks, and we'll reassess you then and get you back into that running event. So it's a once a week for 2 weeks, or it's a twice a week for 3 weeks. There's a number. And I stumbled across this, Aaron, as I was talking to a chiropractic friend of mine. He said, well, surely you have somewhere to record this number, because how do you know what your therapists are recommending? Mm-hmm. And as I sat there and I thought about it, hang on, we always do that verbally, but it's never written down anywhere. And you see it all the time. If I've got a new therapist joining my practice who's not very experienced, they will always underservice.
Right.
They will, I'll see in a few weeks, Mr. Johnson, we'll see how you're going. And if I'm not on site, if I don't know that, that's costing me a fortune. But worse than that, Aaron, it's giving the patient a bad outcome, and it's giving my practice a bad name. So I kind of roll with this. So I thought, okay, well, here's a system, here's a process. The action plan is a simple sheet, and every patient gets it, and it's not negotiable. There's no one who doesn't get one as a new practice in any of my practices or any of my clients' practices. And then we've got somewhere to record it. So we go back to our new patient register, and we'd say action plan given, yes or no. Now that's got to be a yes. That's not negotiable. That's got to be yes. So they've got to get an action plan. But the next column I'd want on it was how many consultations were written on that action plan. So if it's once a week for 2 weeks, it's a 2. Mm-hmm. Twice a week for 3 weeks, it's a 6. So there's a physical number that I can write down on somewhere that I can then see what did the therapist recommend for that patient. Now, as I got more into this, I thought, okay, what else do I want? I want to know how many consultations did that patient actually book. So we might have recommended 3, but did they book all 3? So I've got my new patient register now says, yes, they've got an action plan. Consults and action plan is 3 or 4. So that's 4. Consults booked, 4. Now, I can't tell you, Aaron, how important that little system is in all of your clients' businesses and people listening to this. That single system will put 30% onto your bottom line without question. It's because all of a sudden, Aaron, you can, as the owner of the practice, you can look down the new patient register and you can see, did they all get the plan firstly? So are they following your system, yes or no? But more importantly than that, are they making reasonable recommendations? And are my admin team booking in those recommendations? So do I have an admin problem? Do I have a therapist problem? Or do I have a whole system problem? And I can see that on a single spreadsheet, and that's why it's called 1 minute practice. And I do this to my clients. So all my clients now using, we then made a portal out of it. So it's now an online program. Because I got the shits with spreadsheets, Aaron. Spreadsheets started driving me crazy because then they're all over everywhere else. So we created an online system for it. So now I get all my clients to fill in the new patient register. Before our mentor sessions every 2 weeks, I log into their system and I can see on their new patient register those key numbers. I had a client yesterday and I'd been working with him for a while, and I looked at his new patient register and I said, mate, how come 4 of those last 6 clients didn't get an action plan? Because that action plan was no. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I'll speak to someone about that. See, one of his key systems has fallen over, and if he wasn't there all the time, he wouldn't know that.
Right.
So what I was trying to create, Aaron, was a process or a program that would let me run these businesses whether I was there or not. And it's not a practice management software system. So it's not the appointment book. It's not the clinical notes. That's a different deal altogether. I wanted somewhere where I could track the key steps and processes that happen inside the business, because that's where the money is. Now, we then went a bit further with that. I'll get a touch further into it. We then thought, okay, they're getting a report, an action plan, which, by the way, is the most important training tool you will ever use in your practice, Aaron. You will get your new patient action plan. You will get your new team members to practice it with you, and you'll get them to put their last 4 action plans into a folder. And every week you get them to role play the action plan delivery for you. And that's the most important training tool you'll ever have inside your practices, because it's what we call in business the critical conversion conversation. Done your assessment, you're then explaining what you're going to do about it. I mean, how you're going to fix this. And that's what separates a great therapist from a poor therapist. Who does that conversation well? Who develops rapport? Who gets the confidence in the patient? Who gets them to buy into the treatment program?
Right. Is the power in having the recommendation written down for the patients, as well as having it written down for you as the owner who's not on site? Is that the?
Yeah, we give a copy of that sheet to the patient to take away as well, because it's a physical, tangible thing. But you hear it all the time from therapists, Aaron. When I put this into businesses, they will say, "Oh, we haven't got time. We haven't got time to do that written report." Now, and I'll sit there and say, "Okay, well, so let me work it out. So you're now seeing a patient and you're not explaining at all what they've got, what you're going to do about it, or the plan." "Oh, no, we explain it." I said, "Well, you're already doing it. Just write it as you speak. It's a form note, circle. This is what they've got," and you can make it a really tight form. But the key thing I want is what are you going to do about it? Right. And that is the most important training session you will ever deliver in a healthcare business. And exceptional therapists deliver that just because they know how to do it, and it's innate. But people who aren't naturally gifted in it, you've got to train them in it, how to deliver it. And because you've heard therapists bumble their way through the end of an examination and wonder why the patient has no confidence in them. They spend 10 minutes explaining it, and the more they talk, the deeper hole they dig for themselves, and it falls apart. This is a 2 to 3 minute, largely scripted conversation based on what you found that gets the patient to buy into the program.
Yeah.
So the step I wanted, so people then said to me, "Paul, that's great, but how do I know if I've recommended 4, my admin team booked 4, how do I know that patient actually came for 4?" So what we wanted another column on this new patient register. It was consults completed in the next 30 days.
Okay.
And you just get every month, the admin team goes back to new patients 30 days ago, look at their practice management software system. How many consults did Aaron have? I might have seen you, I recommended 4, you book 4, and you've then only come 1. So you're a 4-4-1.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad outcome. And what I've got to then contact Aaron, I've got to speak to the therapist. What happened with Aaron? We recommended 4, we booked 4, but he only came for 1. That's not a great outcome for me. There might be a 4-4-5. There might be a 4-4-6. But you've at least got an idea, Aaron, about what's happened to each patient in their journey over the first 30 days, whether you're there or not.
Mm-hmm.
And without that, the only way, I'll tell you now, the only way you as an owner will know that your team are under recommending is probably by seeing lots of new patients coming in, but still seeing a real empty appointment book. And that's a dangerous way to run a business. You're running it when you see it's going pear-shaped rather than getting onto it quick. Yeah. Think about how much money it's costing owners if they don't know those numbers. If they're not there to hear those conversion conversations, they don't know what's happening. They're finding all of a sudden after 6 months that their appointment books are pretty skinny. That's your reputation, your business, the whole thing's fallen over with a simple spreadsheet and a 1 sheet of paper. It'll make you a fortune. Seriously, if you do nothing else after today, written action plan, new patient register, and you'll love this one. I'm a fan of processes, as you know, and the guys said to me, is there any time where someone shouldn't get an action plan? Is there ever a situation where someone doesn't get one? And I thought for a second, and my mind went back to one of the things I learned early in business. One of the keys to success in business is to remove discretion at the operating level of your business. Remove discretion. So I want to remove choice. I want to remove option. The more options a therapist has, the more they'll mark it up. I'm happy for them to choose their own treatment and other things, the technical things, but in terms of the processes and steps, it's not negotiable. So it can't be negotiable. I don't want them to decide, should I do an action plan or not? It's just a yes. But the original question, is there ever a situation where someone doesn't get one? And I thought, yes, there's one situation. There's only one time where a patient doesn't get an action plan in our business, and that's if the patient dies during the consultation. So if the patient unfortunately passes away during the consultation, they don't get one.
Right. But
there's no other situation.
Now, even if you're referring them out, action plan is like, go see
action plan. So. Action plan was you need to go and see the orthopedic surgeon. Consultations, you don't need to see me at all, so that's a 0. But it's a 0 because we might have a comment in the next section. 0 because they're going to see the orthopedic surgeon.
Right.
Equally so, if they're going to see the surgeon, I would probably want to make a follow-up booking in 4 weeks to see how they went. So that might be a 1. Right. I'd then say, how come you only recommended 1 for Mrs. Johnson? Well, because she's going to see the orthopedic surgeon. Fair enough. But then the funny thing was there, when you put this system in, it's not negotiable. And I talked about the death of the patient. If someone dies, they don't get it. Yeah. I would go to my new patient register, and if there was ever a chance, if there was a patient who didn't get one, so there was an N on my new patient action plan, I'd go to the therapist. Hey, Brendan, mate, sad news about Mrs. Jones yesterday. What do you mean? Well, mate, I looked at the new patient register. She must have passed away. Oh, how sad. How are you? And they would sit there and go, okay, yep, I get it. And I only ever had to do that a couple of times. But the point is, you would do it and do it quick. So as soon as you the idea of 1-minute practice, you look at your new patient register every morning in a minute, and you contact Brendan. Sad news about Mrs. Jones. You've just got to mention that you know that it didn't happen, and it will stop. Right. If you let it go 6 weeks, and like this client yesterday, it hadn't checked it for a couple of days, and a few people didn't get an action plan. Mate, don't let that slide. That's how it expands. That's how your systems fall over when you multiply your practice. If you can't get it right in one practice, it'll multiply across 6, but get it right in one. If all you guys do is put an action plan in place, a written action plan for every new patient, not negotiable, with a number at the bottom, track the number, you'll be staggered at what information you get about your therapist rebooking rates. You'll be staggered. Anyway, there's $1 million
awesome.
tip for you.
Oh
million dollar.
man, I want to learn more about that.
That's
That's such a great tip. Like, yeah. So, is that the 1 minute practice, or is the 1 minute practice incorporate a little bit more than just this stuff?
oh, well, that's one part. I think we got 10 different parts. It started out as 10 different spreadsheets. So,
Yeah.
but what I was frustrated by, Aaron, and this is how I ran my business. So we had a KPI, so key performance indicators. We had marketing plans. We had a 1 month phone call list, a cancellation call list. We had profit and loss. One of the most important things in your business is a down and dirty profit and loss.
Mm-hmm.
We had checklists. We had 90-day goals. And I think the final one, we had a lead tracker. So these are in my businesses, Aaron, with the 9 circulating or 10 circulating spreadsheets that I had on my desk or computer at any time, which as an online entrepreneur drove me crazy, because it was, and especially when the clients send me the spreadsheet, where's the spreadsheet? Show me this, and they didn't have it, or I couldn't find it, or so I got together with a good mate of mine who's a programmer, and we then put all that onto an online portal, and that essentially became 1 minute practice. It was the health business management portal that you can use to see all these things at any one time.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, we got business owners around the world using it, but it's not a practice management software system. You still need that, but it's just how you track the systems and steps inside your business.
Yeah.
But honestly, Aaron, and I think there's a who was the guy, the LinkedIn founder. He said, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. So you've got to, and it's this theory, you've got to launch early. Don't wait for it to be perfect.
Right.
Launch early. And that's probably a mistake I made with 1 minute practice. I wanted it to be right. So I could have launched 1 minute practice with just the new patient register, and it would have been really successful, and it is.
Mm-hmm.
But what about this? What about the profit and loss? What about the checklist? What about the KPIs? What about the marketing planner? So I then put all these other things in it as well. So it's now a really good and powerful program. But some people get on it and they get overwhelmed by all the different spreadsheets. I said, no, just start with your new patient register. Start with that. Keep it simple. But it's totally customizable. I've got a private client now with 36 steps on her new patient register.
Wow.
So they get this, this happens, then they get this letter. So it's recorded somewhere. But equally, I've got really successful clients with 5 steps on it. Did they get an action plan? How many were on the action plan? How many were booked, and how many consults in the next 30 days? That's a really tight new patient register that will work the house down in most businesses. But as you get further on, you want to add steps and other things in.
And you got to have someone else entering in like someone on staff has to enter those figures in for you manually.
Well, yes and no. If I'm
check in on it, right?
If I'm doing I'm doing a new patient register, and it's a pretty simple new patient register. I'm going to have the date they came in, the initial consult date, the patient's first name, last name. I might have therapist name, which is a drop-down option. So because that's set up, you put the therapist name, multiple locations, and I also want admin person's name if they have one. So who's the admin person that did that? And that's a drop-down list as well when you set it up. But then, and we just might have action plan given, yes or no, consults and action plan, and appointments booked. Now, if you're a sole therapist without an admin person, that's a 10-second entry.
Yeah.
But ideally, how I like it to happen in most practices is the admin person fills that in. But the admin person that fills it in is the admin person who's doing the follow-up bookings. So they're at the front counter. The therapist brings out their action plan. And also I hand you over to Johnny. He's going to take you through and do the bookings for you. We'll see you next week. Make sure do that exercise, Mrs. Johnson. So the admin person then has the new patient action plan in front of them. They'll make the bookings and they'll go to 1 minute practice. First name, last name, action plan, yes. Consults and plan 4, bookings 4. And why I want the admin person to do that is because they know their job is to book all 4.
Right.
So if the admin team gets there and they go, Aaron wants to see them 4 times, but I can only get them to book once. It's a 4-1. I want the admin person to go, gee, Aaron's going to probably say something about that. Aaron wanted 4, but only booked 1. So, but then you'll have a comment next to it, and the admin person might say, Mary was going overseas for 2 weeks, so we could only book 1.
Yeah.
But
Is
can you see
there,
what you can see
yeah,
what I got there? And she's at least accountable for it. There's a consequence if it's not a 4. You've done your good job. You've done a great consult. You've recommended well. I want admin team to support you. Equally, I want to know if the therapist did a bad job and under recommended. So if I'm seeing 1s, there's not much, the admin team can't do much about that. They're not going to turn a 1 into a 4. If you're under recommending and you're a 1-1-1 guy, I'm going to probably have to speak to you about why you're a 1-1-1, but the senior therapist has been around a long time is doing 3s and 4s or 5s.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Is the,
How's that, Aaron? You're okay?
yeah, that's
I
good.
get excited about this.
Dude, my mind is like, but so is your big recommendation to, it sounds like it's like, is to just make sure everyone's like scheduled out through their whole plan of care when they leave the first visit.
Ideally, yes, but that depends a lot on the practice, Aaron, and who you're seeing. If I'm seeing, if I'm involved in a practice that is post ACL reconstruction, so they've come back from the surgeon post ACL and they need 3 months of care. So that we should be booking a lot of that in initially. So it's twice a week or 3 times a week for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
But if I'm in, it depends on our area. If I'm in a corporate practice, which I was in the middle of Sydney, these guys are these executive types. They don't have that diary advantage. So we probably try to get them into at least a 2-week block.
Okay.
So because they're busy, we'll say, well, look, to get you into that running event, Aaron, you'll have to see us twice a week for 2 weeks. I know you're busy, but this is what you got to do, and we will schedule a tighter 2-week block.
Okay.
Some people have to schedule a really tight 1 week. They can't block book too far in advance. But the biggest mistake you make, guys, is booking session by session. We'll see you next week, Mrs. Johnson, and see how you're going.
Right.
That's just rubbish, and that's costing the profession. It's costing your practice. It's costing the business, and it's giving the patient a bad outcome. And if you look at other professions, look at I don't know, the dental industry. If I'm going to have my teeth cleaned, or it's a course of care, to get the outcome, Paul, you need to see us twice a week for 2 weeks, and that's the course of care. That's just the program. That's what I need.
Yeah.
If they're not saying, give us a ring, let us know when your teeth are dirty, and we'll give them a clean for you. That's poor care.
Well,
Poor
my
outcomes.
recommendation is like, I am the doctor. Like the mindset of my recommendation is do this.
And that's what you've got to train at. And that's why that conversation is so critical. That's the one you've got to train. So you've got to get all the action plans together. They bring their action plans to you. You role play it and you have a laugh about it. Like I do it with my private clients. As soon as I get a private client on my program, one of the first things I do is I show them action plans, and they have to go and practice it with their clients for a week, their patients for a week. And I say, okay, next call, I want you to present me your last 3 action plans. And I'll just sit there as the patient. What have I got? And we role play it. And you could have said this, you could have said this. And one of the key things when you do it, guys, when you hear your clients or your patients, when you hear your team members deliver it to you, you got to remove vague words. If they say things like, we're going to do a little bit of ultrasound, we'll do a couple of stretches, and we'll do some exercises. Like, that's just rubbish. We'll do a specific stretch. I'll show you one exercise, Aaron, that I've used for the last 10 years that increases the performance on every athlete I've ever seen. And to do that, we'll see you twice a week for the next 2 weeks. See, it's a definite recommendation. It's not a vague recommendation. There's no little bit, some, sort of, kind of. You remove those words quickly. I mean, do you want to go to the brain surgeon, Aaron? And the brain surgeon says, oh, we'll get in there, we'll take out a little bit of this, and we'll do a bit of this, and we'll take some of this and see how that is. No. Here's the scan, Paul. We're going to go in here, and with pinpoint accuracy, we're going to take exactly this section. We'll do this. We'll close this with 3 sutures. We'll do this, and you'll be fine. Oh, that's the discussion I want to have.
Right.
Why is it different in PT? It's not different. We just muck it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, that's, sorry to get carried away, but I'm passionate about this. It damages the profession. It damages around the world because we're not saying the right things. We're under-servicing. People are walking away from our vague consultations. Oh, I think I know what I'm going to do. They sort of come back or they don't because there's no real plan. And then we wonder why they leave us and go and see another professional and rave about them.
Right.
Stupid.
Right.
Stupid.
Anyway. Yeah, but those are great points, and thank you for bringing it up. We could probably chat about it all day.
We could.
So what's like, so where does this, like the 1 minute practice fit into your business and life now? Like where are you doing with this stuff now?
Well, because I've got a tight schedule of private clients. I only work with a certain number of private clients at any one time. And I was frustrated that I didn't have a portal that I could help more people. So 1 minute practice, the online portal became the way I could help health business owners around the world follow my systems without actually being privately mentored by me. So
Right.
it's the online tracking system. And I think and you've got to go, and actually so do I. It's all outlined. I wrote the book, How to Run a 1 minute Practice.
Okay.
So that's the book that outlines the steps that I talked about today. And it's new patient register, KPIs, and the book outlines the steps exactly in place. But 1 minute Practice is the online portal that you can join as a member to use for you and your teams to track this in the cloud.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's really how it works. So it's an online portal that tracks your business steps and processes, including action plans, new patient registers, KPIs, checklists, in one online portal you can check from anywhere in the world. I've got clients all over the world. I log into 1 minute Practice before their session. I say, what happened here? What's happened with this? And we do their KPIs, we do their P&L, and I'm on the other side of the world. So that's exactly what you can do as a health business owner with 1 minute Practice.
How do people who are listening how can they get a copy of the book, or where do they find it?
Oh, if they go to, I did a deal. If they go to 1minutepractice.com, so ONE minutepractice.com, there's a button up on the top that says Get Book. If they click that, they'll go to the book page, and depending where you are in the world, I assume most of you guys are US at the moment, Aaron, or you're a global figure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they go to that, if they go to that, you can buy the book. And if you get it, it's the international thing. It says $19.95, but if they put in the code Aaron L, so AARONL, they'll get the book for $4.95 Australian dollars. We post it out for you for $4.95 Australian dollars. It's got sample. There's a link in the book to get sample action plans, and you can see how it all works. So that's all in the book, and we'll post it out for you for $4.95 Australian, which I think in US dollars is about 50 cents, Aaron, the way the exchange rate's going at the moment. So
yeah, I looked at it, was about like $3.55, $3.55.
So just go to 1minutepractice.com, ONEMINUTEPRACTIC, 1minutepractice.com, click Get Book, click on the international version, and it'll take the price down from $19.95 down to $4.95 Australian dollars using the code Aaron L. Any problems, just contact Aaron, he'll fix it up for you.
All right, yeah, we'll do it. And so, Paul, thank you very much. That's very generous. And where do people find you? Are you on Instagram, Facebook, or anywhere else?
It's funny you say that, because we just did the social media event. I'm not big on socials. LinkedIn is my preferred platform. So you can find me, Paul Wright, Newcastle, Australia, on LinkedIn. But if you go to 1 minute Practice, you can get access to, there's resources and things there at 1minutepractice.com. Or alternatively, go to, actually the other thing we did, Aaron, remember we did the World Physiotherapy and Physical Therapy Business Success Summit. I'm going to roll that out again sometime this year, early next year. So if you want to get on that list to find out when that comes up next, that's summit.physio. So summit.physio, put your details in there. Or my other main practice website, my main business building website is healthbusinessprofits.com. So plenty of resources there at healthbusinessprofits.com. Get the book at 1 minute Practice, or register for the next business summit for free at summit.physio.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you very much. And when do we find you on this hemisphere?
Mate, because I'm the 1 minute Practice guy. My wife and I, we always tie an event into a trip. So we're looking at the Alaskan cruise thing early 2019. So we're probably going to do some US, Canada early 2019. So
right.
We'll tie up and do something, mate, because I want to do something with you guys. You're doing some great stuff. So we'll see if we can get together and do something for your guys. Yeah,
that'd be awesome. That'd be great. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been my pleasure. I am looking forward to the next time, because I feel like I've got 1,000 more questions for you and want to just chat some more about this whole thing. So I thank you for being here and spending your time and coordinating with me. I think it's really early in the morning for you, and it's something like that. So thank you again for being here. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, mate. You've been a champion for my project, so I'm only happy to return the favour and happy to do it again.
All right. Thanks so much. And this is the CashPT Lunch Hour, and this is Aaron LeBauer and Paul Wright, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much.